Eliot Kane had always believed his life was built on an unshakable foundation, a real estate empire stretching from New York to San Francisco, hundreds of employees, loyal partners, the woman he loved. He was 52, and he knew how to laugh in the face of risk. But that morning, a phone call cut through the silence of his penthouse like a knife. "Mr. Kane," the voice on the other end trembled. "You need to sit down. Your brother, he..." In the next few minutes, the world fell apart. Thomas, his younger brother, was dead. But that wasn't the shock. In his apartment, the police found documents indicating money laundering through companies directly linked to Eliot. Sitting in his office among the luxurious leather furniture, Kane felt a chill run down his spine. The newspapers were still silent, but he knew that tomorrow his name would be on every front page. His empire was under attack. He turned to the huge window through which he could see the city at night. Thousands of lights shone like indifferent eyes. "Why did you do this, Thomas? Why did you drag me into this swamp?" The thought tore at his brain. The phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer. "Eliot, listen carefully. Don't go to the press. Don't sign anything. And be ready, tomorrow the storm will begin." Kane clenched his hands. He had always ruled the world around him. But now the world was preparing to rule him. And for the first time in many years he felt fear. By morning his face was on every television channel. Billionaire tycoon at the center of the scandal. Blood money of the Kane brothers. Cameras were watching outside his house. His partners began calling one after another, not for support, but to distance themselves. The government initiated audits, shareholders demanded explanations. Bank accounts were frozen. His wife, Sarah, always calm, lost her balance this time. "Eliot, tell me this is not true. Tell me you were not in this." He was silent. And that silence was more terrible than any words. And then came the blow he had not expected. His son Michael, a Harvard student, refused to return home. His statement was leaked to the press: "I do not want to be associated with the shadow of my father." This was the first real loss. Not money, not reputation, but something much deeper. And yet a bitter discovery awaited him. His lawyer brought a dossier, evidence that Thomas had not acted alone. Among the signatures on the forged contracts was the name of one of Eliot's closest friends, a partner of 20 years, Henry Lawson. "They set you up, Eliot. They're already playing against you." The world he had spent half his life building was now shattering like glass. That night, Kane sat in his dark office, looking at a photo of his family, and realized that he could lose not only his business but himself as well. A chance meeting changed everything. In a private parking lot, a man in an old coat approached him, his company's former accountant, long since fired after the conflict. "Mr. Kane, I know what's going on. And I know who's behind it." At first, Eliot thought this was another trap. But the accountant handed him a flash drive. "Here are correspondences, hidden transactions, black schemes." Lawson had worked with government officials for a long time. Thomas was just a pawn. "You were the main target." Kane took the media with distrust, but that night, as he looked through the files, a chill ran through his body. This was not just a conspiracy. This was an elaborate plan. Henry had bribed the officials, used Thomas as a cover, and shifted all the blame onto him. For the first time in many days, Eliot felt a sense of power. He was not helpless. He had knowledge. Forbidden, dangerous, but knowledge. "I can destroy them. But I can destroy myself." That thought kept him awake until morning. And it was then that he realized, now he had a choice. The courtroom had become an arena. The press, the cameras, the lawyers, everything merged into a chaotic noise. Lawson sat across from him, confident, almost smiling. He was certain that Kane would fall for good. But when the moment came, Eliot stood up. His voice trembled, but every word struck like a hammer. I have something to say. And I will not remain silent any longer. He spread the documents from the flash drive on the table. Schemes of kickbacks, signatures of officials, evidence of Lawson's betrayal. A rumble rose in the hall. Henry turned pale, losing control for the first time. But Kane understood, it would cost him everything. His empire would not survive this exposure. His reputation was already ruined. All he would have left was the truth. I am not sinless. I allowed silence to rule me. But today I choose differently. It was all or nothing. And he consciously chose nothing. Several months passed. His fortunes crumbled, his companies sold off, his friends disappeared. He lived modestly, in a small house outside the city. Sometimes in the mirror he saw not a business shark, but a man who had learned to breathe freely for the first time. Sarah left him. Michael was silent for a long time, but one day he called. Dad. I saw what you did. And, perhaps, for the first time in my life, I am proud of you. These words were worth more than any billion. In the evenings, Eliot went out onto the porch and looked at the starry sky. He no longer had an empire. But there was silence, real, honest. And the question that hung in the darkness. Is it possible to be rich and honest? Or maybe true wealth is just the ability to look the truth in the eye. He did not know the answer. But he knew one thing, silence would never again be his currency. Life after the fall was unbearable. Although the court found Lawson guilty and sentenced him to a long prison sentence, society did not forgive Kane for his silence of the past years. Newspapers continued to call him a corrupter who spoke too late. His name became toxic, banks did not want to do business with him, investors avoided him, former friends crossed the street so as not to say hello. He went to Europe, trying to find a new beginning there. Barcelona, Prague, Vienna, the cities greeted him with bright lights, but emptiness reigned inside. He sat in a cafe, watching people laughing, holding children by the hands, and understood, he no longer knew how to live like everyone else. His burden was too heavy. One evening in Venice he met a woman. Anna, an art historian who did not even know his past. She looked at him as a person, not as a symbol of spoiled billions. Her voice brought him peace. You have the eyes of a man who has lost everything, but who can still find meaning, she said. Eliot smiled for the first time in months. Perhaps he really had a chance at rebirth. But fate was preparing another blow. Just as he was thinking of leaving the past behind, the future found him. One morning, an unsigned envelope appeared in his hotel room. Inside was a photo of Michael. In the photos, his son was in the company of people Kane knew well from the files, Lawson's former partners, those who had escaped justice. The note was brief: your son is playing someone else's game. If you don't intervene, he will be the next pawn. Kane felt the ground slipping from under his feet again. His son, who had finally begun to talk to him after the betrayal, was now in danger. No. This time I will not be silent, he whispered to himself. He returned to the United States, even though he knew he would be met with hostility there. He was an exile in his homeland. But when it comes to his son, there is no such thing as exile. Kane began to investigate. The old connections were still working, albeit dimly. He came across the people behind the new network of financial fraud. And the scariest thing was that they were using his son's name as a cover. One evening he met Michael. The boy was confused and irritated. Dad, I thought you wanted me to be independent. I found people who trust me. You ruined your own name. Michael, they don't trust you. They're using you. You're repeating Uncle Thomas's path. His son wouldn't listen. But when Kane showed him the evidence, the same flash drives, the files, the copies of correspondence, Michael began to understand. His world was also falling apart. Together they decided to act. This time, not for money, but for the truth. They gathered data, went to journalists, raised a high-profile case. The press, which had hated Eliot only yesterday, now saw in him not a hero, but a man who was ready to lose everything for his son. But at the same time, he realized, it could cost him his life. After all, those he spoke out against were more dangerous than Lawson. The intimidation began quickly. Anonymous calls, shadows under the window, broken windows. Anna begged him to leave again. "You've done enough. Don't lose yourself." But he only looked at her silently. On the day the material was published, he was stopped by men in a black SUV. One of them leaned over and said quietly, "You have one last chance. Get out. Otherwise, your son will disappear." Kane stood before the abyss. He could refuse, save himself and Michael, but leave the world in the hands of those who destroy the future. Or go to the end, knowing that he could lose the most dearly. He chose the second. The story exploded in the media. Kane's name was again on the front pages, but this time not as a corrupter, but as a whistleblower. His son was saved from other people's games, but his own fate remained in question. The last shots, he alone, on the roof of an old house, looking at the night city. His empire is gone. His money is gone. But he has something that he never had before, peace. Maybe I lost everything. But maybe that's what victory is. The camera moves away, leaving him in the darkness, among the millions of lights of other people's lives.